Good afternoon. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Monday. Some last-minute bargain hunting once again propelled shares higher today. The main bourse was on track to end the day lower, but like what has been the trend so far, trading got a shot right before it closed. The PSEI up 0.25% today to 6,283. Beatriz Lopez of Regina Capital couldn't say it any better here. You have investors being more cautious, according to her, during the early hours of trading, waiting for the round-off period before they pick up at attractive prices. Just before we went on air after session closed, some more economic data streamed in. You have March remittance climbing 5.6% year on year to $2.8 billion. That's according to the BSP. Lopez did say that future data releases no longer have a drastic impact on market movement, and that it was the shift to GCQ for NCR that was a positive surprise. That's despite the detection of more cases of the Indian variant over the weekend. 10 more additional cases were reported. But what we should be keeping an eye on is how long the restriction lasts, given that we've been switching at 2-week intervals here. But the easing of mobility curves bode well for some stocks here, particularly mall operators and retailers. Ayala Land, for one, climbed the most today. That's up 5.6% to 32 pesos and 95 centavos a share. You also have SM Prime rising as much as 2.7% after it was raised to hold at Maybank. The mall operator is now again up 2.7%, priced at 33 pesos and 90 centavos a share. Other retailers also in the green. Robinson Retail, for one, is up 1.7%. Pure Gold also jumping here, 5.4%. That's following a sell-off due to its removal from the MSCI Philippine Index. That brought it to its lowest valuation since March last year. Today's session, its first rise in 9 trading sessions. Pure Gold now at 33 pesos and 35 centavos a share. Now, one mall operator also rose despite being axed off the MSCI Philippine Index. That's Mega World. You have the property player reporting a 33% decline in their profit for the first 3 months of the year to 2.4 billion pesos. Consolidated revenues, likewise, is at 10.1 billion pesos. Real estate sales also declining by as much as 39% to 5.9 billion pesos. But it was core revenue surging for the third straight quarter, which boosted the stock in today's session. That's at 9.3 billion pesos, higher by 10% quarter on quarter. Kevin Tan, their chief strategy officer, said the improvements are a reflection of recovery in most of their businesses here. They see better quarters ahead, especially as more Filipinos get vaccinated. That's a much needed push for the stock after it sank 15% in the last 3 sessions. Mega World today at 2 pesos and 72 centavos a share. That's after surging 4.6%. Now, also mirroring the rally is Converge after it projected an expansion in subscriber base as more Filipinos stay at home. That's 1.7 million home fixed line subscribers after doubling the base to about 1.2 million in the first quarter. The broadband market share also widened to 27% at the end of March. That's from 19% previously. It's now looking into technology offered by potential partners, which include firms from Singapore and Canada. Converge, as you can see right here, is now at 18 pesos and 78 a share. That is a climb of as much as 1.5%. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The country continues to be a laggard in the region in terms of motor vehicle production due to weak demand in the first quarter. The Philippine Star reports that local car manufacturers produced a little over 19,000 vehicles in the first 3 months, down 13% year on year. Myanmar, which has been under political conflict since February, posted the biggest drop, while Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand saw the highest motor vehicle output in ASEAN. Despite production growth in these countries, total motor vehicle output in ASEAN slid 1.3% to 936,000 units as of end March. Vehicle sales in the Philippines still managed to climb 9% in the same period, with over 70,000 units sold despite ongoing lockdowns and provisional safeguard duties on imported cars. The Trade Department isn't on board with plans to make vaccine passes mandatory for individuals entering establishments. The DTI says implementing such rule may only lead to discrimination, especially for those who have not been vaccinated yet. This is the same sentiment expressed by retailers who added that the move may be premature since inoculation is still ongoing. The health department also opposed the proposal, saying there's not enough evidence to show that a fully vaccinated person would be immune from the virus and would not be able to infect others. Presidential advisor for entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion raised the possibility of using vaccine passes in the capital region once herd immunity is achieved. He says this could likely take place by the end of the year, given the supply of vaccines arriving in the country. Now, more on that story. The Trade Department is estimating that as much as 300,000 employees recovered their jobs after the NCR Plus bubble was placed under GCQ with heightened restrictions. This as on-site capacity in restaurants have been increased to 20% for dine-in services. But is this enough to buoy the ailing sector? Let's find out from Eric Teng, president of Resto PH. Good afternoon, Eric.
Good afternoon.
All right, so how many restaurants have reopened after restrictions were eased in the NCR Plus bubble, and how many jobs were regained? I mean, the DTI is reporting 200,000. How many of those do you think will come in from the restaurant sector?
Well, we are monitoring just the NCR level scenario these days because the 10% to 20% increase was only for the NCR plus regions. Unfortunately, we do not see a significant increase in the number of restaurants to open. Those that were temporarily closed before, they would probably need to wait for a 50% capacity before they would consider reopening. At 20%, I'm afraid we are still at the guaranteed loss position. So it's very difficult to convince our members to open.
Expectations is that there's going to be minimal reopening. So how many do you think restaurants, at least in your group, did decide to reopen after restrictions were loosened up?
We don't have any estimates at this point because the reopening was only announced. The increase in the capacity was only announced for Saturday. So we have no clear data as yet. But from our conversations with our membership, it's encouraging for those who have been open from 10% because it would be an increase to 20%. But those who need more still would not be able to open with a 20% capacity.
Again, like what you did mention, dine-in previously was at 10%, and the alfresco capacity stays at 50%. Does this really make much of a difference, the 10% difference here?
Well, from 10 to 20%, it's a double. We cannot complain about that. It can only be a better scenario than 10%. However, majority, possibly 90% of restaurants do not have alfresco access. So we don't benefit from that 50% open alfresco dining capacity. We are still hoping that government will allow more capacity. That's why we've always been pushing for the vaccine pass to allow the vaccinated to come in.
Now, up to what level do you think should be allowable when it comes to restaurant capacity here? What can restaurants accommodate indoors without sacrificing health protocols? And what's the level that would actually encourage restaurants to reopen?
Last year, when the restaurant industry was allowed 50% capacity, we saw an improvement on month-to-month sales. Less than that, we can only see decline and increase in business closures. So working on last year's information, I think 50% is a bare minimum.
Now, given that as well, how much has the industry lost since restrictions were reimposed back in March? You did say as well during our earlier discussion, you are expecting more shutdowns for some restaurants here. Have you reported more permanent shutdowns or closures following the reimposition of ECQ and eventually that being eased to GCQ?
Business closure has been an ongoing process since the start of the pandemic. But for this year, every week we see a lot of closures. You just have to go to certain malls, certain wings. You will see 80% of the tenants are already shuttered. It's much more difficult in areas where the CBD, where they're dependent on the CBD traffic, because there are a lot of work from home businesses these days.
You did say on a weekly basis it's been an ongoing process here. Do you have at least an average how many restaurants normally close within a given period?
No, sorry. We cannot get any data from the landlords because, of course, that would be privy information for them. But from our membership, we try to encourage people to stay afloat. Unfortunately, we're not very successful at that.
By the end of the year, what's the outlook like here for the sector? How many shutdowns are you expecting as well?
I actually don't see a difficult situation from Q3 onwards. We're dealing with Q2 now, and what we're seeing is that the increase in the number of vaccines can only help improve our sales and our capacity. I'm encouraged by the American CDC when they already they're no longer requiring masks for indoors because their data suggests that those who are vaccinated have very minimal risk of getting the virus or passing the virus on. We're hoping that for the Philippines, the DOH and other government agencies can have the same findings very soon. Unfortunately, of course, our vaccination stage is still, starting out. But I would hope to see significant numbers vaccinated in the NCR region by Q3. And therefore, by Q4, we should have better business outlook.
Okay, now since you've mentioned what has been a trend in the US, you have a number of restaurants there as well as in other Western countries here, dishing out vaccine freebies here. Is this something that you are amenable to?
Not only are we amenable to that, we're already going to be doing that starting June 1st. Rest of PH members have signed up to either give freebies or promo items or discounts for those vaccinated, or even just for the first shot of vaccination. This is our part of our efforts to promote vaccination by giving incentives to those who might be hesitant. We can't get out of this without vaccination, so I hope the public, a significant number of the hesitant public, will start getting vaccinated as soon as possible.
Now, we did report about this earlier. We have the DOH and the DTI already downplaying the possible use of vaccine passes. But is this a move that you are willing to support?
Well, we were pushing for a vaccine pass as early as January. Unfortunately, some sectors fear that it's discriminatory in nature. We don't agree with that. From where we stand, a vaccine pass is not a door to keep people out. It's a key to allow more people in. If government can only allow us 20%, how long do you think businesses can sustain itself? How many weeks more? So what we're hoping is that if government can only give us 20%, then give us an additional 20% of the vaccinated traffic. Now, even up to this point, there are no clear directives whether somebody over 65 who's been vaccinated can go to restaurants. Right now, they're still not allowed. We're hoping for some clarity on the matter, and I hope that government can come up with a decision very soon.
Now, of course, you also have the government authorities, the DTI in particular, coming up with a safety seal certification. How's the take-up been so far, at least from your members?
For the membership, we've always been very supportive of the DTI, as the DTI has always been very supportive of Resto PH and the restaurant industry. We've actually held several dialogues already on how we can improve. The next one we were discussing about the vaccine pass. But of course, Resto PH is involved with membership across the country in different stages of the pandemic. Some are in GCQ, some are in MECQ. It would take a while for us to feel comfortable to start reopening and to get the public back with full confidence. I'm afraid right now there's such a stigma embedded into our public with regards to indoor dining. It will take us some time before we can convince people to feel comfortable dining in restaurants again.
All right. Again, of course, confidence, one of the sticking point here, especially for the sector when it comes to reopening. Again, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Eric Tang, President of Resto PH.
Thank you.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, May 17, 2021. Catch Business World live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.